Watauga Arts Council with your host, Cherry Johnson, serving arts in Watauga County for more than 30 years.
Hi, I'm Cherry Johnson with Watauga County Arts Council, and even though this isn't the roughest winter we've ever had, it still is a good winter to curl up by a fireplace somewhere and read a great book. And as you know, I like to bring, in the wintertime especially, writers to share with you. And I have another writer with me today. This is Nancy Kaiser. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you. I really appreciate this. This is very exciting for me. It's a first TV interview.
Really? Well,
yes.
You're in good hands.
Oh, I have great confidence.
So Nancy has been working with the Arts Council briefly already, helping us start our scheduling of artists or authors to come in at our gallery reception.
Yes.
To kind of add a little extra something. And you came to the last gallery reception yourself.
Yes, met a lot of lovely people. It was a wonderful exhibitions on, so I highly recommend it. Yeah,
So
I mean, I would be back, not even there to book sign, just to see the exhibitions.
It's great.
Yeah.
Those receptions
Yes,
are fun.
it really was.
We had a big crowd.
You did? I was amazed.
So
Yeah.
it's the place to be on the first Friday of every month, for sure.
Yes.
Well, Nancy has a really interesting story behind her books. I learned about it before that reception when she and I had met and discussed it, and I was really fascinated with it and thought you would really be interested in it. And also I wanted you to get really interested in her books, too. So Nancy, let's talk about it. Now, first off, before we start into these books, were you a writer way back?
No, I'm actually a horse person from way back. I grew up riding horses and showing horses in central New Jersey, and I became a pharmacist following my grandfather and my father.
Doesn't sound like a writer.
No, we had a family drugstore, a Rexall drugstore, and I practiced in that for a couple years and then fell in love and married a horse vet. And ended up back on the horse farm where I really belonged. I managed our equine hospital and breeding farm for 27 years.
Wow.
The most writing I did was our Christmas letter. But I would get all these comments back like, oh, we can't wait for your Christmas letter to come. And I thought, gosh, that's kind of a sad life.
If that's most exciting.
But yeah, exactly, but it was very nice to hear, and then we retired, or I should say he retired, and we sold the farm in New Jersey and bought 54 acres in Creston. And 6 weeks into building our dream retirement home, my husband decided he never wanted to be here. So
Nice of him to tell you that.
yeah, it was not exactly good timing. So about a week later, it was obvious we were separating, and about 5 or 6 months later, we were divorced. And I never saw it coming. I was clueless. Wow. So I was here living in a camper on the side of Three Top Mountain. No house to live in because we stopped construction. I had 3 cats, 2 dogs, and 2 horses at the time.
The horses weren't in the camper.
No, they were actually in Greensboro. I went to UNCG years ago, and I put them with the farm that I had them at.
So you were looking for a way to get them back with you.
Yes, but not on our property, because I had done that long enough. I wanted not to have daily horse care as my,
okay,
it was not meant to be a farm. It's really the top and shoulder of Three Tops, so you'd have to have mountain goats on it. So about a year, maybe a year after this happened, I bought a house in Todd before winter, and I decided I needed to try and understand how this could have happened. I had been sort of on a spiritual path, and I had begun animal communicating back on the farm in the early 90s. So I kind of understood that if I didn't learn what my soul was trying to teach me by this very traumatic incident, something worse would happen until I did learn it.
Right.
So I began journaling. And I just sat at the computer, and I mean, my heart just poured out onto the computer screen. And I learned more in that period of time, which I wrote for about 14 months. And I saw lessons when I would write about what happened that I never saw in the moment, because you're in the emotions of the moment. So I was uncovering all these lessons as I was writing.
So this was all about for yourself.
For
this
me,
was not for
this
everybody
was
else.
a personal, honest self-evaluation, no intention of a book.
Right.
I shared portions of it with friends of mine back in New Jersey who had helped me tremendously get through this. And they were kind of astounded at my style of writing and how easy it was for them to understand the lessons I was learning, and they kind of pushed me to turn it into a book, which
became
16 months later, because it was a huge personal journal that had to be edited 3 different times in order to get it to this size. And I learned a lot about publishing and editing, and once you decide to do that, it becomes a business.
Right.
So luckily the universe brought me wonderful editors and people that helped me, and a wonderful publisher down in Asheville that published this book. And I've just gotten back such wonderful letters and emails from people about how much it's helped them.
Great.
Which was the whole reason why I went through all of this effort to get it written.
So you weren't writing a book to be writing a book. You were writing a book because it was helping you, and then you were sharing that with other people through this book.
I was writing in order to understand and learn. Once you learn the lessons, you can let go of the anger and the rage and the grief.
Right.
Because when it happened, to me, it was like a death. It was as though, my best friend and my husband had died. So I was grieving a loss. It was not my choice to be divorced.
Right.
So it's very different when choice is removed from the equation. To me, that's a big thing.
I'm sure, yes.
Because I had chosen to leave our farm in New Jersey. I was ready. I loved it.
Sure.
And I cried 3 or 4 days before we left and the day we left. But it was my choice, so I was ready.
Right.
This
was different. Yeah.
Different, So the writing of the journal is what healed me.
And the subheading says, An Ordinary Woman's Extraordinary Journey of Healing and Transformation. So you became transformed by this process.
Absolutely. I was 53 when we moved here, and I learned more about who I am.
Wow.
During that period of writing that journal than in my entire life.
So for another woman out there who is in a similar situation, this hopefully will be a guide for them.
I think it really, from what I've heard, not only does it make a woman realize that she's not alone out there, they will read just how close I was to just leaving this life, because I happen to believe in reincarnation. So the thought of leaving the physical life is not that big a deal. So, I was at that point, and what kept me from that was who would take care of my dogs and horses. So I owe a great debt of gratitude to my animals. I'm very happy. I'm very happy today. I honestly can say I think it was probably the best thing that could have happened in my life. And when it first happened, my life was over.
Yeah.
I was terrified.
So it's, you speak so passionately about what I think a lot of people have felt is that sometimes when it feels like a door has just shut in your face, it gives you a chance to see the window.
Well, absolutely. And I was here, and a lot of kind of spiritual laws and whatnot are undercurrents in this book, because I lived them. And I didn't realize it at the time until I started to write, and then I said, oh, and I realized that I created this on a soul level. It was not my husband, it was the two of us together, and until I was accountable for that, I was never going to move forward.
Right.
If I had made different decisions in New Jersey, I wouldn't have needed to be brought to the mountains of North Carolina and totally abandoned in order to focus on self. had I focused on self back in New Jersey, I could have avoided a lot of this trauma.
But you wouldn't have had the same passion and the same,
No.
the same truths
No.
that you've discovered. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no. So that's why I say it really happened.
was
And
meant
it
to
always
be.
does happen in our best good.
That's true.
We don't believe it when we're going through it, and we don't know how we're going to survive it. But that's what I hope that, letting go really is kind of a beacon of encouragement to women who they're just lost. I was lost. I had nobody. I knew maybe 2 people.
Wow.
And if I can survive it, I'm not anybody special. So letting go can really help people move through things quicker.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Now, you kind of discovered a whole new life, not just without your husband and just in North Carolina, but your entire existence changed.
Totally.
Now, you mentioned that you had already learned how to talk with animals before.
Yes, back in the early 90s, I all my life, I thought fantasize these conversations with animals, but apparently it wasn't just fantasy, because in the early 90s, one of our clients had a filly foal born who was born with curvature of the spine,
Right.
which in 30 years we'd never seen anything like it.
Right.
And it was through working with her, my husband was working as
Right.
the vet, and I was kind of just along for the ride, so to speak, but a mutual friend had an animal communicator communicating with the filly at the time. And I, had heard about a few people doing that, but I figured, these were like some kind of really special people. But she was teaching a workshop in our area
Oh.
at the mutual friend and client's farm. And we went there to watch because there was also a veterinary chiropractor working, and my husband was getting very interested in doing the coursework on chiropractics for animals. So we really went to see the chiropractor, and I thought it was a curiosity to watch the communicator, until I listened to a woman that was a participant in the workshop that the communicator was doing, and she was sitting there saying what the animal had said. And I looked at her and I thought, well, she's no different than me. And it was like a cosmic 2x4. And I just thought, I need to learn how to do this. And it was probably the first true knowing I've ever had in my life, and I was 42 years old at that point. And I was going to do whatever it took, and I actually drove into New York City once a week for a year.
Wow.
And I worked with, she was a clairvoyant counselor and a psychotherapist who I had met like 9 months earlier in a completely different way. And she didn't really teach me how to communicate. She taught me how to meditate,
Right.
to slow my mind down so I could actually begin to hear. But it was a long, a process, and it took a lot of diligence, but I'm, responsible. And I had such a desire to be able to do that. And things started to happen quite quickly because I think it was in the perfect timing for me, and it is what my life's work is supposed to be. So a lot of things got facilitated. A lot of animals started to come to us that I started to work with, and 20 years later, I love what I do.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that it's not something that a gift you discovered, but it was something that you learned, which I find really interesting.
Yes, and that was the key that day, was that I realized that this is something that is learnable. And I think the gift is involved with, if it's in line with your life's purpose or your soul's purpose, then you get a lot of support, which is what I got. But all of our brains are physiologically identical. So there is no reason why anybody can't do this. And there are a lot of people out teaching workshops about animal communication. I tried to actually take one with the premier communicator 20 years ago in this country, Penelope Smith. And I tried 4 different times, and I could not get into her workshops.
Wow.
So eventually, I'm a little slow. Eventually I decided, well, there must be some reason. And I kind of asked my guides and teachers that work with me. And what I was told was that I didn't really need to learn how to do it. I needed to remember how to do it.
Interesting.
So I think it was something that, I've done in other lifetimes. And it came so fast that there's no doubt.
It was a renewal of knowledge.
Yeah, it was in another part of my subconscious, and it just needed to be brought forward.
That's fascinating. Okay.
And I think why they blocked learning or going, I think they didn't want me to learn someone else's system. Because you know how you do that
Sure.
with a teacher or
absolutely.
a mentor. And the person that I studied with in Manhattan was not a communicator. She helped me learn to meditate and be able to access all this stuff. It was amazing. That's the first time I journaled. So much happened within the first couple of weeks that she said, well, I do hope you're journaling about this. And I thought,
oops.
when? I'm running a veterinary office, I'm taking care of all the animals, we've got hospital cases. But I did, for about 6 months, I did journal when I could find time. And it was a tremendous help.
When you got to this book.
When I got to this book, which is the book I always intended to write.
Tales of an Animal Communicator. So this is in essence, a bunch of short stories.
Yes, they're whereas my trauma was the focus in this book and how I survived it. This is really about the animals and what they've taught me over the years. The book starts with the filly foal who was named because of love. It starts with her story because without her, I might not be doing this.
Right.
And the remaining stories are all my personal animals. And there was so much to write that there's actually going to have to be a second book that is going to be called Tales of an Animal Communicator, Being a Clear Voice. And that will be all the lessons I've learned from my clients' animals. And these are all things that, the animal world is really trying to get the humans to understand. And my hope for this book is that it's really going to broaden people's perspective on not only their animals, but really all animals, and it'll help, I think, enrich their relationships with their animals.
Okay, so I was going to ask you, why would someone want to read this book? It's pretty obvious the
Yes,
reason for this one.
yes.
The reason that someone, besides just pure curiosity,
Right.
would be the reason you'd want them to read this book.
Really so they can look at their own pets in a different perspective. When I first started doing this, as I say, there are a lot of spiritual beings that work with me.
Right.
And if I wasn't comfortable with the information we had gained from the animals or just my own intuition back then, which was as a neophyte, really, I would channel information that I called insights and guidance, and it would come through as an automatic writing. And during one of those sessions for a client, what we were told was that companion animals had come into being in order to help or to answer our soul's cries for help, because it's a very difficult place to maneuver down here on Earth. So I want people to realize that the animals that have come to them have come for a reason, and they should make use of that reason.
Wow.
And if you don't even really realize that they have, how can you?
How interesting. Now, you also have clients that have animals that they bring them to you.
I don't see many animals personally. I used to back in New Jersey because of our horse clientele. I would be on calls with my husband, and we'd have a horse that was terrified to get an injection or something. And I would go in the stall and work with the horse for a little while and explain to him why we needed to do this and ask him if it would be okay. Because we really don't show the animals that kind of respect. We kind of just blow in and, we've got 30 horses to vaccinate or tube worm or whatnot, and we just go in and do it. And most of them are very willing and they let us. But there are some that have had, you know, maybe some abusive past, and they just are like, I don't think so. So I would go in and talk with them, and my husband would go down and keep working on the next horses, and I'd come and I'd say, all right, I think we're ready. So in that way, I would see some of the animals. Now I don't see, the animals are scattered all around the world. I've even, you know, worked with cats in Cairo for my best friend's daughter-in-law.
So what was the issue with the cat in Cairo?
One of them was getting ready to transition, so I helped her with that. And then just the moving, relocating from the States to Cairo and whatnot.
That's traumatic for anybody.
Yes, yes. I actually have a beautiful cat. You know, cats in Egypt are very revered. And she sent me this beautiful cat statue of one of the gods or goddesses of whatever.
Wow.
That sits on my dresser that protects me. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, I hope you've been as fascinated as I have to hear Nancy talking about her books and the history behind them and what she's conveying through her books. And I want you to have an opportunity to not just catch up with her. You have a website, which is...
Yes, it's Nancy Kaiser, which is spelled NancyKaiser, and then animalcommunicator.com.
And you can purchase books through that.
Yes, you can purchase books through that. I know Letting Go is at Dancing Moon, and they were going to put both books in at Black Bear. Whether they have yet, I'm not totally sure.
Go to Black Bear and ask.
Yes, you can go to Black Bear and ask. And it's also available as an ebook on Amazon or Nook, you know, Barnes & Noble for Nook, and also Smashwords. And all of the links to everything are on my website. That's probably the best place to start.
Exactly.
You can find out everything you ever wanted to know about me. And what I do, I have a number of different healing modalities I work with. So I actually have solutions to the problems. You know, in the beginning, I was just thrilled to be able to communicate with animals. But you start to come up with these issues, and you want to try and help somebody. And so the universe, you know, they flowed these things to me. So I have a lot of solutions for everything.
So if you're curious, check out her website, check out her books. I think it's something you will very much enjoy, getting to know Nancy through her books and through her website, and perhaps you'll even get an opportunity to talk to her in person yourself.
Yes, I'm all around town. You know, in the summer we're doing book signings and whatnot. I'm a member of High Country Writers, which is a wonderful local group for authors, and we're out and about all over town.
Put your authors all over town.
Yes.
So get involved with the written word as well as the arts in all of their mediums, all of their modes. Check out our website, watauga-arts.org, for this and a lot more.
Watauga Arts Council with your host, Cherry Johnson, serving arts in Watauga County for more than 30 years.